Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with yet another Cosmonarchy castover. This time, we're going into a new set between Eud64 and HitEmUp. Eud being our potentially top Terran player, it's certainly a possibility. HitEmUp trying to play random in the next tournament, so he's just going to be chilling on all the different sides. Let's see which one he winds up getting in this particular set. Now, I will say he's probably not picked random in this series, but it looks like it will be some Terran versus Protoss with HitEmUp in the top right of Derelict, Eud in the bottom left. So welcome everybody. Sometimes we'll occasionally get a video to pop off on the algorithm, so if the algorithm gave you this video, then I hope you do what everybody else has been doing and check out Cosmonarchy. It's a brand new game built within Starcraft 1's admittedly dated engine, but there's some things that Starcraft 1 just got right, and we are emulating a lot of that here, riffing on it, having our own take on a lot of those things. Of course, the races themselves are the same names, right? The same names. It's still Terran. It's still Protoss. And of course, it's still Zerg, although they're not here right now. But there's a lot that's different. There's a lot that's been changed. For example, Eud will be going Fulcrum first because, of course, we've kept the names of the units, or the races the same, but the units and structures, they have many different names sometimes. The Scribe instead of the Probe, the Mason instead of the SCV. Although when you pop them out of the Ministry, which is not the command center, you get SCV good to go, sir, as the unit response. So we haven't gone back and changed that just yet. Maybe we will. Maybe I'll think about a way to, scrap cobble together him saying Mason instead. Probably not possible. But hey, if you... another thing we have that everybody should check out if they haven't already is a single-player campaign. I think it's about 5 missions long, and it is by 3Crow, and it is a pretty funny project where it has a lot of stuff like, what would you call it? It's like slapstick comedy almost, where you just have just a crazy amount of stuff going on there. So it's pretty cute in that respect, in my opinion. You can definitely check it out. And one of the quotes is, of course, the main character is named Mason, and every time somebody shows up, a new character, they say, Mason, it's me, and then they introduce themselves, and their name always ends in man, so you might hear like Nightman or Hardman or whatever. So if that sounds interesting to you as a nice way to learn how to play Terran, certainly a possibility, check it out. Now, Eud is scouted over here, but he has not confirmed if it's an embassy or not. HitEmUp has been grinding out a ton of games as Protoss, as all the races, but particularly as Protoss, just trying to see what exactly is the playstyle here. And by the way, this is our very first cast on pre-release in some time, so we will end up seeing some new graphics here almost certainly, assuming HitEmUp actually goes for the Hierophant, or even perhaps the dreaded Optecton. I don't believe this is the most recent incarnation of the Optecton, and it went through a couple of different stages of its revision. It's actually not fully done yet, because I still have to revise its main canon. But beyond that, it's interesting stuff, Now, the embassy coming online here means that HitEmUp will be able to field extra workers. We'll see if that's actually what he wants to do. Something that I've been noticing is that HitEmUp tends to be a little bit on the greedy side, but he is going to go for the Witness first. And I think a lot of what he's trying to experiment with and practice is just to see, like, exactly how, solid are we? How far can I push this sort of thing? So the Vultures are going to hang out back up here. They have laid up their lobotomy mines. This is a very nice little choke area maintained by that half HP Ministry, which, by the way, if you guys didn't notice this, there's another one in the corners here, and when it's neutral, it's considered an ally, and in Cosmonarchy, you can return to allied town centers. Team games have been being played lately, and we've seen that being used quite a bit, so that's pretty cute as well. So you can just go ahead and drop some workers off over there and immediately start harvesting the gas or the minerals, whatever you need. So it is going to be a fast scrapyard, interestingly enough. I believe this would have been after the scrapyard changes to make it so that they train a little bit faster. Now, the Witness is going to come over here and spoil the fun. It will see the lobotomy mines, but it doesn't look like it's going to see the force that's sort of parked up over here. Instead, the Matadors are slowly coming out, and the Matador works as sort of like a micro tank. This is actually before the changes to the Matador, because the Matador did end up getting movement speed buffs later on in pre-release's lifespan here. So that's an interesting choice that we'll have to keep watch. Maybe that would have impacted how the game goes. But yeah, the Witness is going to get curious and pop on over here and see, oh, wait a second, you've got a little mech force camping over there. And as the Dracodon count rises off of the only one gate, HitEmUp is going to go ahead and put down some defenses, but no Nexus, interestingly enough. It looks like what we have Eud doing here is with his quarry, which trains additional workers as well, he's just going to macro up. We have all these choices, all these tools for the players to decide, do we want to macro up massively? Do we want to just make a lot of workers, or how do we want to do it? And the Witness, even though it stops you from training workers from the embassy, it does give you some nice little information, right? And I feel like HitEmUp's being very cautious with the 3 Wardens. He really does not want to lose, whenever he puts his Nexus down, he really does not want to lose it. So that's interesting. Eud obviously having the worker advantage right now because his secondary worker production queue has been pumping pretty much nonstop, although as we look at it, of course, it temporarily comes to a ceasefire. You will probably notice that there is no supply in Cosmonarchy. Instead, these numbers in the top right are worker count over military. So we see that neither player's military is particularly impressive right this moment, but with the Nexus coming in at the Ministry's halfway point, EUD has the economic push. And, you know, if a fight were to happen because of 450 minerals invested in these Wardens, it's unlikely HitEmUp could be able to do much pressure here. But he is going to reactivate his worker production. He will be able to eventually catch up if he adds, like, another Nexus faster or maybe another embassy. But I feel like this is already a build order victory for EUD in terms of having more, you know, oomph, I guess, for lack of a better term. This attack force isn't particularly good at dealing with Wardens, but he can add a single Palladium at some point off of his second Fulcrum maybe, so that he can start sieging it. That's where you get access to the real tank, not this little micro tank that we have over here. No, the real one, the Phalanx. More gateways being added, though, and this is where HitEmUp is going to start spiking his military count up. He does have a lot of Vespine, so he's banking for some extra tech. I want to say maybe he's thinking about charging up to the Ancestral Archives, but we're going to have to wait and see on that. So, with all that said, though, I will say that there's been some methodology to the way that the game has been shifted and updated in the wake of Acropolis #1, which is our most recent Premier tournament. And one of the things that we tried to do is basically make it so that Protoss have more of a reason to build their Tier 2 tech, because a lot of people, at the end of the day, were kind of skipping the Tier 2 and going straight to Tier 3, or the endgame stuff, because Protoss doesn't have tech requirements like the other races. Like, they don't need add-ons for their structures to get access to all of them. Oh, nice little spot for the Witness there, the Anseal revealing it via detection. That's what the star pad was for. But, you know, you can see basically with HitEmUp here, he's going to go for gateways, and then he's eventually going to spend his considerable gas bank on some kind of high-tech thing, probably skipping directly to the endgame tech. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll find out, won't we? Now, with the stockade coming, I can only presume this is going to be for adding... Okay, it could be adding one of two things. It could either be adding a Vestry so that he can get some healing on the front line, which is the most likely. There's an outside chance he adds a Covenant, which is the former Covert Ops, and it turns into an add-on for the infantry structure instead of an add-on for the science facility, right? So basically what it does is it unlocks localized extra unit production. So, like, just like how the machine shop, right, the Palladium is required to make the Phalanx, the tank, you have to kind of do that for all of the different things, right? It also unlocks another unit that people don't really use that often right now, the Madrigal, but I think with the most recent changes to the Madrigal, it'll probably be a little bit more attractive. However, the Vestry is on the way, so we will see healing, and the healing works on any unit, you know? It works on, well, it might not work on ground units, or rather, it might not work on air units, but it works on ground units always. So the Shaman heals everything, air and ground, and the Cleric heals just ground. And we do see it will be a Shaman. I also love to see the drop. He's actually going to be picking up this Phalanx, interestingly enough. Where is he waypointing this? I just wanted to check to see if he was... Yeah, okay. So he's going to come over here. He's planning on unloading the sieged Phalanx over here, and so that he can just try to one-shot some scribes. It will largely depend on what else is going on. I feel like maybe a frontal attack would be a little bit better. The synthetic Sonot is on the way. That is, I think, 600 of each resource or 500 of each resource. And so he's actually adding a second one here. You know, this is one of those question marks where you're thinking, okay, what are you going to do with that? And do you have enough time to actually make that happen, right? That's the big question for me, is how long until EUD pulls the trigger? Because he has this very big, I would say, advantage in terms of immediate military. But if the reworked Demiurge comes out, or if it's Empresses or something like that, you can start to turn the tide in a bit of a sort of snowball-y manner in a way. Now, a Mason's been brought in here with the fight. Would love to see some Watchdogs go down on the front lines. And let's see what comes out of the synthetic Sonot. It will be Empresses. The Phalanx arrives. It'd be pretty immediate pullback, so you can see it gets a couple of hits here. And, ooh, that was a really nice one. I'm not sure if he's target firing it or not, but it doesn't look like it, because the fourth shot was an opportunity for even more damage. Now, here comes the trigger being pulled on other stuff, but the Anseal already losing most of its shields. It has a protective barrier over it, and it's just going to end up flying in haplessly. The Wardens and the Engram here definitely being pretty effective, but the Matador is only deploying a little bit late to the party here. The Phalanx actually surrounded right now, so it's going to go down. However, the Matadors are in a pretty good spot to just absolutely eviscerate the front line. And we still have Blackjacks, we still have the Phalanx, but I think at this point the Empress is about to pop out, and that's probably going to cut it, you know? I think HitEmUp is no longer in any damage. It looks like the drop was put back in at some point, and we see the rubble there for its efforts. I do like walking into the Matador Flame. That's very ballsy, but unfortunately for EUD at this point, there's really not that much left for his push, and he didn't have any reinforcements on the way. I guess he didn't go in with any of his healing, huh? Or maybe there was one Shaman with that army and got popped really quickly. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I feel like if the Shamans had been there, or a Shaman had been there, maybe you would have seen something a little bit here and there. So the Empress is here. The way the Empress works is that it debuffs units. When they die, they turn into timed life zombies and get mind controlled. So that's basically the way it works. It also works on structures, but you can imagine that the timed life expires fast enough that you can't really do anything with the structure. It can help with turning static defense against your opponent for a couple attacks or whatever. Now, the amount of time that you get depends on how many times the Empresses hit the unit. So if you attack something that's like weak, you might only hit it with 1 or 2 attacks before it dies. Like you think about like these Blackjacks or Vultures or something. It's probably not going to be too impactful. However, if you attack like, say, a Phalanx that takes a lot longer to die because it has 200 health, or God forbid, you know, like some of the endgame tech that has like 400, 500 health, that's obviously a situation where multiple Empresses can really stack it up. And at that point, you can turn your opponent's units against it. It's like 1 second for every stack, right? So it can be pretty impactful. I think it might be a half a second for every stack. Honestly, it's a unit that we don't see too often. So one of those things where I'll brush up on the exact specifications a little bit later on. Now, there was no follow-up witness ever made. The first one died. There were no additional ones ever made. The third base now coming online, but it's very late compared to EUD's. And his tier 2 is just about to finish, although I do feel like maybe the tier 2 is also... It was delayed, shall we say, from all of the gas expenditure. But he's got a good number of Phalanxes, good spread of them as well. Nice lobotomy mines out in the front to stop any front line. And yeah, HitEmUp realizes, okay, I could probably do some damage here, but I don't want to attack before my sort of death blob is out. He also has a Demiurge out. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. It's a sort of like this supreme automaton that when it's within range of a couple, like it's something like 8 range, I think, or 6 range, a very small range, fair enough. It has a much higher weapon range. You can see it has 9 weapon range. But if it's within 6 range of its enemies, when they die, they will be turned into this sort of stasis state. And they will, if the Demiurge is still there 5 seconds later, the unit is mind controlled. So, and sort of like rebirthed in a way. It doesn't have all of its health, but it has like a pretty good amount of HP back. So anyway, that's basically that. We see the production adding on over here. We got captaincies. Love to see some apostles out as well to maybe counteract things like the Demiurge passive and stuff. Or at the very least, you know, if your units die to other reasons with no Demiurge around, and you just target fire the Demiurge with your Phalanxes or whatever, that can be pretty good. The Zealot goes out and doesn't actually see too much. It might have caught a little bit over here. I'm not 100% sure. It looks like maybe HitEmUp is tangentially aware that something like that is happening. The one Zealot going to get bopped by that Vulture being double healed by Shamans. And we do have a pretty strong Empress stack. Not great anti-air. We don't see any Goliaths with this army. The Blackjacks can do okay, but they don't outrange the Empress, right? That's the big deal. The Empress has 8 range. It's very, very solid in that respect. Whereas if you wanted to try to engage that, you'd need Goliaths. The Blackjack 6 range is not going to be as impressive. So let's see what ends up happening here. You're going to get a first look at this. One of the main reasons why you want to go Empresses versus Phalanxes is because of the friendly fire when they turn into a zombie. The Phalanxes have to be forced to target fire other things. So you can see down here, the backline is falling. Some flanking units coming over here, but it's not really too significant. Another shot with the Phalanxes, but it ends up getting controlled by the Empresses, who are doing a great job of just slamming out fire after fire. It looks like one of the Demiurges has fallen, and the other one might not be too far away. If it can get target fired here, that's the high target. Yes, it does end up going down. So we don't have to worry about passive control, but you can see the Gorgons being turned by the Empresses as they come on in, these sort of air units. And, you know, the Shamans are helping out quite a bit over here in this situation, but they're going to start to fly over, and now we've got 5 of them. And where is the anti-air switch? Well, it looks like we already have 4 Goliaths coming out. We have the Apostle coming out as well, which has that raise dead ability, if you will. This force is going to end up getting popped over, but, you know, it was pretty effective, I would say, at sniping the other, you know, ground-based tech units, right? You can see here the overlay there just from the fact that some of these units were dying and providing a little bit of a buff to the units. And yeah, it works out. It gives them, when the zombified unit dies, it basically gives a slight movement speed boost to the allied Protoss. That's what's going on there, in case people were wondering. now we have actual visuals for that. Before we didn't have any visuals, and you would wonder, wait, why is the Protoss army moving faster? Or why are the Protoss army, why is it attacking faster? What's going on? Now, on the back of that attack, EUD has set up a 4th base, is setting up a 5th base. I really like the way that his macro is going so far. However, the Emperor stack is getting very scary. And what are the responses to that? Where are we going to respond to that with? He has a single starport making Gorgons. It's not a bad idea because the Gorgon applies a slow, movement speed slow that stacks up over time, eventually freezing the unit in place, and they can only attack. So, you know, you might be able to pick units on the way out, but the Empress is over here, and I mean, with this many Empresses, you do have to wonder what's going to be the counterattack. So the Gorgons are going to go ahead and do their best to try to engage. The Empresses are very expensive, mind you. And having the ability to make 2 of them at a pop is very, very solid. But you can see here, it lives with 5 HP, and then flash shielding starts to kick in. We need those Goliaths to first target the Empresses because they are the ones that they're going to deal the best anti-air. But at the end of the day, not a single Empress goes down. And a lot of the workers end up dying. The Apostle could have revived a lot of those units, but it didn't end up happening. He wasn't close enough, it looks like. Now thinking about taking a 5th base of HitEmUp's own. He's already taken 3 o'clock. So you can see he's using the flying Empress sort of stack. You can see how slow they are, too. Like, imagine being able to catch them with something more mobile. In fact, if you still had those Gorgons out, they would have been a pretty reasonable choice for that matter. But, you know, you think about the fact that they can sort of turn and fight, and you have all of the Protoss units on the ground also dealing damage. I mean, at this point, the Empresses are getting very, very out of hand. And you have to start to think about, okay, what can I do that will deal some AoE damage, right? Ironically, I think the only answer that I can think of at tier 1 and 2 might be the Madrigal. Otherwise, you might just need a death stack of Goliaths with the, you know, a couple of the other options here and there might be able to facilitate it. He is banking up towards tier 3. So EUD might be able to get up there. Unfortunately, his Shaman is going to walk into enemy territory here, being a little bit lackadaisical with his unit movement. He's got lots of phalanxes, but again, the Goliath count, very, very woefully under-kitted at this point. We do need to see a little bit more anti-air out of here to deal with the Empress stack, which is now 9 strong. So we had more Empresses than Goliaths, and Empresses are, again, so expensive. Make it 11, sure, just keep pumping up that Empress stack. So again, these units are not permanently turned over to the Protoss. They are going to have timed life, and actually EUD might be able to get out of here with a couple of his phalanxes. I'm not 100% sure. You can see the attack's working out, and eventually these units will end up dying. The one problem is that when they die, obviously they're going to speed up the army, right? So you got to watch out for that, because that is a sleeper little pick that allows them to just continue focusing stuff down. Now, this base just finishes. That neutral anchor not garrisoned. We've got captaincies out here to make some madcaps, but where's the splash damage? Where's the anti-air? Where's the heavy stuff? What can you do? We don't see that many Goliaths at the end of the day, even though we have all of these Fulcrums here, and he has spent down everything. He is going to go for some Valkyries. You know, on paper, I could see where the Valkyrie should be able to step in and help out here. It has been a unit that a lot of people have sort of maligned recently, and maybe for good reason, right? You can see here the captaincy is being turned over very temporarily. The timed life is 40 seconds. That's enough time to actually get, 120 seconds. You can train a couple of units out of the captaincy during that time. You can see how the stacking behavior of the Empress kind of works out in that respect. I was always of the opinion for the longest time that like the way that the Empress passive worked out didn't seem to be too useful, but maybe HitEmUp is making me reconsider that, because realistically speaking, we just haven't seen too many people use them. And yeah, he is going to go ahead and try to make madcaps out of them while he's got the opportunity, which is quite cheeky. And there you go, ends up with, what is that, 48 seconds? Yeah, not bad, not bad. Now the Goliaths are over here in much higher numbers now. I think if we saw 15 Goliaths back when the Empress count was like, I don't know, 7, 8, we would be much more comfortable with EUD's position. But he's lost multiple situations, multiple locations. He's got to retake additional bases. And meanwhile, obviously, as he's taking 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock is being eyed up by HitEmUp, and he's already taken the bottom right. So I guess that would be like your 4 o'clock position. So with 4 on the way for HitEmUp, that is going to be, you know, bringing him up to the 5 base count again. Random zombie Maverick. Nobody likes that. Except for me. I kind of like it. 12 o'clock could get canceled again, but you can see here, like, HitEmUp is immediately reacting to the army presence of EUD. The Valk count only 4. Again, this is another thing where if this was like 17 Valkyries or something, I'd feel a lot better about the situation because of the stacked damage that they can deal. But it feels like, no, this might be a little bit too much. Now, the Valks are eventually going to get turned over thanks to the Demiurge presence. Phalanxes could be sieged during this fight, but doesn't want it to risk it, wants the mobility, and he is going to go ahead and focus them down, right? So that much is definitely working out in his favor. The Empress is not able to stand toe-to-toe with the Goliaths when the ground army is able to take everything else out. We've got more Goliaths coming up, and even though a couple of them are turning over and, you know, becoming zombies and stuff, you can see at this point, if that Goliath count had been higher in the earlier fights, it would have gone very, very differently here. So definitely a good play from EUD to get there eventually, and he's also very, very close to hitting tier 3 timing. He needs a little bit more minerals. He should try to cancel this 12 o'clock position now that he's driven back the army, but is he going to overextend in that position? He hasn't been able to reinforce with too many units. He comes back over here thinking, oh, I got a couple units. No, those are mines. Valk's going back home, at least one of them, making 3 at a time here. So it looks like maybe he's his mineral expenditures are going to continue delaying his access to tier 3, probably because he feels like he needs to replace that army immediately so that he can deal with what the Protoss is doing. He is going to go ahead and catch him in the act of trying to expand to the bottom right. So, okay, there is that. Worker counts slightly favoring the Protoss. He's got about like half a base worth of workers on his opponent. We're getting into a real meaty macro game at this point. 20 minutes in for our first game between these two that we've casted since that ridiculous ZVT where HitEmUp was going under the moniker Leviathan, and he had a cheeky reaction at one point, you know. Now here's a cool thing. If you kill the, well, it's not going to happen there. If he killed the Mason while the Demiurge was there, he could have actually stolen it and gotten Terran tech out of it. But hey, that's not going to happen. It might not even be necessary. Let's see, the Valk's thinking about their angle. That can be the opportunity for more of them to come on in. But now we've seen the switch into Demiurges as the Phalanx count has fallen. So yeah, that's actually going to be enough to, it looks like, to make EUD call GG, because the overinvestment into anti-air without being able to scout him meant that, well, suddenly I can go for the heavy ground units instead. Now, again, that was a game where HitEmUp built, like, it looks like there's just, what's the answer to that? But we saw EUD go for the Goliaths, and that helped out massively versus the Empresses. Those units are very gas expensive, so if you can control your opponent's growth on the map, they're going to be building a lot of those units and not really have much else to do. The other thing that I think went underlooked there, even by my cast, is that I think the Zealot count was really, really high. The Gateway count ballooned up quite a bit later on in the game. We just didn't really look at HitEmUp's base that much in the macro. I'm always like looking at the fronts and these satellite bases. I got to get better at looking back at the actual bases, the mains and such for where the production is located. And I feel like the mineral dumps of all the Zealots helped out massively for HitEmUp in that position, and there wasn't really any more Matador production or, you know, Hurricanes or anything like that to try to deal with the Zealot count. The Phalanxes weren't being sieged because they were hoping to rely on their heavier armor and tank mode and some other things. So EUD definitely struggling a little bit to control that, but you can see on the overview, by the score, he won out. It's just that HitEmUp was able to eventually just keep the same kind of units going for a good amount of time. And that death stack of Empresses, I think that controlled the pace of the game too much to allow HitEmUp to get all those extra bases, which then allowed the losses to be a little bit too great for EUD, but not really that impactful for HitEmUp, if that makes any sense. So anyway, that's my analysis. I hope you enjoyed. We will go into the other games in this set pretty soon. In fact, you know what? Why don't we just go straight into game number 2 here? Why not? I'm feeling generous. We'll do a double up in this particular video. So stay tuned, stay strapped in. So we are going into Impetus 2. We have EUD in the top right, and we have HitEmUp in the bottom left. Let me see. Yeah, okay, this is the updated version of Impetus. We saw this like in 1 or 2 castovers a while ago. I feel like this version of the map is very hard to defend your prospective third base, but I guess if you take this as your third and just control the low ground, it's a little bit better. Anyway, we'll see how this one plays out. Maybe we'll get another meaty macro game, and this will be like a 50-minute video. In which case, I both say you're welcome and sorry. I don't actually know. Maybe you guys can post in the comments what you think. Should the video lengths try to average out at like 20 minutes, 18 minutes, 30 minutes? I see all sorts of other people doing casted, commentaries of, particular StarCraft 1 or StarCraft 2 matches. And I know that StarCraft 2 tends to have smaller games, shorter games, so it's not really the same comparison, but if you guys have a particular preference, just let me know in the comments. I'm always interested in doing things a little bit better. And I promise that in the heat of the macro battles, I'll see if I can focus on the actual bases a little bit more. Just to see what the production is like, how many gateways we're looking at. Part of the reason why I don't necessarily have the instinct to go for an immediate choice for a couple of these things. Oh, by the way, I have to update the score, of course, because HitEmUp has posted a dub. So let me do that real quick. Except I hit a button and it darkened Photoshop. That's not at all what I wanted to do. But okay, I'll figure that one out later. And yeah, one of the main things that I'm looking for here is we have a lattice opener, so we're going to see a little bit of a different look for the way that the game is played. And yeah, I feel like when I'm thinking about the way that the game has been played out. We haven't really seen players with the APM and the consistent sort of focus between like what HitEmUp and EUD have shown, where they're kind of averaging out like around 200 APM, I would imagine. We don't actually have a printout at the end like Remastered does where it shows you the average across the whole game in the score screen, so I can't exactly look at that, but something that we do have over here is the APM counter next to the resources, so you can check that out if you're ever curious as to how good our players are looking. And of course we have the minimap boxes to show you exactly what's going on there. Always a fan of that. You can thank Veek for serializing that. And then you can also thank separately DF for improving the minimap scaling and updating / optimizing the minimap box distance. You can see if you look at the minimap, the way that my screen is moving around is really smooth compared to what it was originally. So shout out to him for that, man. We've done so many small things like that where we've just like improved the rate of rendering or rate of certain like unit order timers and stuff like that to make the units feel more responsive. And I feel like it's generally a good thing. There's some things that you lose if your units are super smart. And that's one of the reasons why I really reject the idea that we should go for stuff like, for one thing, thinking about like the way that the pathing works out and like your units kind of just like buttery smooth blob through each other and stuff. I don't really like that part. I feel like that part of, for example, Starcraft 2 ends up making fights a little bit too boring and also stops you from really being able to pin down your opponent. Like, in Cosmonarchy, what's been observed by some of the StarCraft 2 players, like Hepsea that we've had, we actually just featured a cast with him playing against the Shambler, is that when you start to retreat in a situation, you get picked apart on the way out. Like a couple of your units are going to get hemorrhaged because of the way that the pathing works. And I feel like that's not a bug as much as it is a feature. I think that's a net benefit because it means that you have to consider your actions. And if you ever do have a force that's either a little bit more spammable and expendable, so you don't really mind too much if a couple of them get shaved off on the way out, or happens to just move fast enough that that's not a problem, then that's actually like a difference, a stylistic difference, instead of it being like, oh, well, every race and every ground unit like always works out that way, so that at most you lose like 1 or 2 units on the way out. You can watch this just by watching, say, like Eud64 or any other StarCraft 2 like high GM players and stuff on Twitch or whatever your case may be for StarCraft 2. You can kind of see what I'm talking about here. Oh no, don't attack your own Fulcrum. No. Eud, no. That's establishing dominance right there. It's like, I don't even need this Fulcrum to be at full HP. It's not like it reduces its efficiency or anything. Imagine you being an employee of this thing and then, before you get word of a workplace accident before you even show up. Crazy. Vassals scouring the area. Yeah, let's talk about the lattice, actually, because I haven't really explained what the lattice does for anybody who's not aware of it. You can see the embassy out here for additional worker production. EUD stretching ahead a little bit in workers thanks to his earlier quarry, but it will obviously not last considering HitEmUp is thinking about expanding. He's got these simulacra, and it was really important for EUD, it sounds silly, that he didn't try to attack the sim with his Mason, because I know some people are going to be like, okay, I get the Protoss, they have shielding and stuff, but why wouldn't you do a little bit of hull damage to some of your units with your worker scout if you had the opportunity to? And setting aside the fact that I think his worker made it back home, it's hard to tell. Maybe not. Maybe it died on the way out. I guess I can quickly look to see if any of these have a kill. Yeah, okay, it died on the way out. So the important part is that obviously one of the things that was able to be done here is that, okay, sure, you lost your worker. Why don't deal a little bit of hull damage to make your attack a bit better? Well, when the simulacrum takes hull damage, it starts to split and become a second simulacrum. And that inherits the HP amount and any status effects and stuff. Like if you were to cast Plague on it as a Zerg player or something like that, then it would inherit the Plague debuff, for example. Or more importantly to this matchup, if it had like a polyoid adhesive, which is like the Fire Bat debuff or the Hurakan debuff, where it... any flame attack will... also the Matador, when it's in siege mode, any flame attack rends the armor. That's one of the reasons why I always recommend Matadors versus like Mass Zealot and stuff. This attack force feels very immobile, I guess we'll say. But let's see how good the Sims work out, right? It could end up working out pretty well. There's no crowd control, and in small quantities, crowd control is actually a problem because you're just splitting the Sims. So if EUD wants to pivot into, say, Cyclops or something like that, he's going to have to really watch out for that. But hey, this could be a pretty fast fight, so let's keep watch of it, because the trademark Protoss, I guess you could say durability isn't really there, especially with good focus fire on the golems. They have a passive that gives shields to nearby Protoss units, so you really got to watch out for not focus firing them, but if you do focus fire them, that can be really good. Now you can see here, EUD completely ignoring the Sims and going after the more expensive units. The idols cost 75 gas a pop. They are no joke in terms of their price. He bops both golems. That's 400 minerals of an investment because they're 200 a pop. And of course, the Sims themselves are about 100 a pop, with the idols themselves being 75-75, as previously mentioned. The Matador here is probably going to get bopped, but we'll see. We will see. More Matadors coming out. Blackjack's coming out with 2 Fulcrum production, a 3 and 4 on the way as well. And the Ministry is actually preemptively lifting so that it can get out of dodge, but it's unlikely to take it too much damage. What he can do with this Ministry is he can actually block the idle projectile. I'm not sure he knows that. Doesn't look like he's actually going to do that, but maybe we don't need it anyway because the Matador's on the high ground with the Blackjacks coming in. You can start deploying these guys. Okay, he is actually going to go ahead and block the idle production now and stop the right-clicking for focus fire, but it looks like it's going to be enough. I don't know. It's hard to say. He's starting to get that Simulacra split going. Oh, wow, he's actually going to call GG just from that alone. Okay, it turns out that the Sims were good enough to get him across the line. Wow, I thought for sure that the Blackjacks and the Matadors and stuff would be enough there. This is before some changes happened to make the Scrapyard add-on for the Fulcrum that allows you to make Blackjacks and Matadors. It got 5 seconds cheaper in terms of its time cost. So it ends up being a little bit more of a, I guess, something... I'm a little bit worried about the meta. I kind of feel like the meta is actually going to be absolutely insane. And I would not be surprised if we end up seeing something like that. But that is going to be it for... as far as this cast is concerned, I just noticed that the opacity was set lower by accident, some sort of fat fingering. There you go. Now you get the full white 2 mark for HitEmUp. Join us for tomorrow where we're going to continue this series. There are 3 more games to be played, so maybe this will be a 2-parter or a 3-parter. Either way, enjoy, and I'll see you tomorrow.